Train Sim World 4 barely includes anything new. Certainly not enough to justify a whole new iteration of the game. But one of those things is TSW's first ever Austrian route, and that's what we'll be having a look at today. In all honesty, I did want to like the S-Bahn Vorarlberg route at first, but instead, and after extensive exploration, it has proven itself to be a massive letdown. That's our Dovetail, I guess. This pack includes the 70 kilometres, or 44 miles of track from Lindau, Germany to Bludenz, Austria, as well as the short branch to Lustenau, a station that's very close to the border with Switzerland. As far as I could tell, this route is set in 2019, but please correct me if I'm wrong. The route concept is decent, but the Lindau to Bludenz and Lustenau section already exists in Train Simulator Classic as part of the 3-country corner route by Just Trains. And that version actually continues past Bludenz and all the way to St. Anton and across the Swiss border past Lustenau. I was disappointed to find out that this is the case, since I'm getting tired of seeing so many TSW routes that are just remakes of what we've already got in TS Classic. As boring as the Antelope Valley line is, at least that's a route that we didn't already have in TS Classic. Only one train is included with this add-on, and that's the Österreichische Bundesbahnen Class 4024 or Talent 1 EMU. This is just as frustrating as it is unsurprising, given DTG's notoriously lazy practices. The problem with only including one new train is that the rail scene looks boring and unrealistic with only one Austrian train present. Come to think of it, I'm surprised that Dovetail didn't just reskin the existing BR182 Eurosprinter model to make it look like the OBB Class 1116 Taurus. At least then, that would have added a little bit more variation to the Austrian motive power on offer. Or maybe they're saving that for a future add-on bundle, who knows. Actually, that would be a bad idea, because they've already done a BR182 reskin in one of those bundles, one that I refuse to buy, especially since it has no business being payware in the first place. There is an elephant in the room regarding the Talent 1. And that is reused sounds from the BR442 Talent 2. Apparently, this is because Österreichische Bundesbahnen didn't allow Dovetail to record the sounds from an actual Talent 1, but it doesn't change the fact that the real Talent 1 sounds nothing like a Talent 2. From what I've heard in real footage, it sounds more like a Class 377 Electrostar. Dovetail are infamous for their habit of reusing sounds, and this situation with the Talent 1 doesn't help their reputation at all. Rather frustratingly, DTG once again recycled the Deutsche Bahn BR185/2 electric locomotive for S-Bahn Vorarlberg, disregarding the fact that we've already had this damn thing with at least 3 previous routes, not counting the MRCE and Railpool variants. This thing first appeared on Ruhrsieg Nord in 2018, and since then, it has been reused on Main Spessartbahn and Kassel to Würzburg. So that's now 2 instances of DTG reusing the BR185 in the core route of a TSW iteration. I mean, talk about blatant laziness. I am really getting tired of DTG recycling rolling stock several times over, especially since they still haven't bothered to update the BR185/2 to give it better sounds or functionality. I mean, for God's sake, you still can't even walk through the, for want of a better term, engine room. The experience of driving the Talent 1 is utterly ruined by the reused sounds. For some reason, there's a weird echo that DTG added to the horn that is not present on the Talent 2. While you can press the spacebar to blast the high tone as normal, you would normally be able to press the N key to blast the low tone as well. This doesn't work on the Talent 1, for whatever reason, but you can still blast the low tone if you click the button on the dashboard. I don't know too much, if anything, about the Talent 1, but I still think the physics are overpowered. I say this because it feels like the train accelerates way too quickly, even when the throttle is only at around 50% power. This unit has a combined throttle and brake lever, as well as another lever labelled as the train brake, but I don't really use this lever out of habit, and I don't know how the real drivers handle these things. You get 5 scenarios for the Class 4024, one scenario for the BR185-2, and another scenario for the BR193 Vectron, although the Vectron is mainly an add-on for the supposedly upgraded Nachfolger Dresden. The first scenario I tried was called De Grosse Tour, or the Grand Tour in English. It took me 41 minutes and 14 seconds to complete, and it involves driving a Talent 2 from Lindau Hauptbahnhof to Lustenau via a change of direction at Wulfort. On the way, you can disembark at Bregenz and Wulfort to learn some facts about the local area from tour guides. Timetable mode includes 286 playable services for the Talent 1, 167 services for the Railpool BR193 Vectron, and 148 services for the Deutsche Bahn BR185-2. That's decent enough, as far as I'm concerned. And speaking of the Vectron, you deserve praise higher than a stoner if you can recognise the riff I can play on this locomotive's horn. Besides the engines and units I just mentioned, you'll also see the MRCE ES64U2 Eurosprinter on this route, but only for 4 playable services with the intercity coaches from the BR101 pack. This locomotive comes with the Hamburg to Lübeck DLC, which I reviewed in July 2023. As a much appreciated bonus, Train Sim Germany have also supplied a modern-day Deutsche Bahn Red reskin for the BR628 diesel multiple unit, which you can see on the non-electrified side of Lindau Hauptbahnhof. For reference, this is the unit that comes with the Niedertalbahn route, but the DB Red reskin doesn't layer onto that route in timetable mode, as it's too modern for the time period that route is set in. If you've got S-Bahn Zentralschweiz, you'll also see the RABE 523 or Stadler Flirt EMUs in timetable mode on S-Bahn Vorarlberg. Even though it makes the route look a little bit more realistic, I am extremely hesitant to buy that route because it is insultingly short at only 16 miles long, and I am dreading the arrival of Rivet's next Swiss route, unless they actually subvert my expectations for once. It takes at least 1 hour to cover the full route in the Talent 1, provided that you're running one of the REX1 services that skip most of the stations. The speed limit on this route gets as high as 160 km per hour, but the Talent 1 has a maximum permitted speed of only 140. Aside from the debatably pretty mountains and lakeside scenery, there's really nothing too special or challenging about this route in the slightest. There's no severe inclines or especially unique operations to contend with, and the steepest gradient I noticed was only 1 in 100. The only real challenge when driving on this route is getting used to the frequent station stops, as well as the inconsistent spacing between stations. I like how you can walk right up to the lake at Lindau Hauptbahnhof, but there's this weird pointy bit of terrain jutting out of the water. Meanwhile, the foliage around the nearby sidings looks better than most other places on the route, and that's really saying something. But in saying that, I've realised that it still sure as hell isn't anywhere near as good as the Niedertalbahn. My first impression of the scenery detail on this route wasn't good, because a lot of the scenery, even that which is right beside the track, is absolute shit. As much as I like running alongside the lake between Lindau Hauptbahnhof and Bregenz, all throughout the run to Bludenz and Lustenau I noticed loads of areas with minimal detail, and, of course, the dreaded 2D grass texture with no proper foliage detail. An especially bad area was in the wide open field right next to Wulfort station. Elsewhere on the line, you'll see roads that have next to no detail on them apart from a dotted white centre line. This only serves to spoil the immersion, and my enjoyment of a route that I genuinely wanted to like at first. On the single track branch over to Lustenau, there was even more rubbish scenery. Starting with the long section just past the Y junction at Lauterach, where you'll run through the middle of a completely empty field with large areas of undetailed grass textures on both sides of the track. The building assets do not help the situation, as they appear to have very minimal detail. Yet another big patch of undetailed 2D grass textures can be found right next to the track at Hardfussach. And I also found the upteenth case of no proper foliage detail on the right hand side of my train as I came into Dornbirn from the north. The space between the platform and Angelika Kaufmannstrasse at Hohenems station just looks awful. This time it's a flat concrete texture, or whatever that grey stuff is supposed to represent, and the terrain isn't even smooth, looking quite unnatural as a result, and don't even get me started on this floating road. In real life, and even as far back as 2019, this spot has been occupied by a bus stop and a large glass and metal structure that's used for bike storage. How Dovetail could have got that this wrong is anyone's guess. When I was doing a short run from Feldkirch to Bludenz, down at the southern end of the route, I could still see more garbage scenery from the driver's seat, even in the fields and built-up areas that were right next to the track. This whole route looks like it was made back in 2017 or 2018, not like the brand new route released in 2023 that it actually is. I'm hoping that, by now, you've gotten the point of just how bad this scenery is, because at this point, I've run out of patience to keep making notes of any more areas of weak detail when I inevitably find them. After all this time, Dovetail should have finally sorted out the garbage passenger AI, but I noticed these NPCs all glitched together on the platform at Lauterach, instead of walking off to the station exit. The terrible scenery details and completely inaccurate sounds on the Talent 1 have completely ruined the experience of driving on S-Bahn Vorarlberg. I'm very disappointed in how this route turned out, although quite frankly I shouldn't be surprised given that this is Dovetail we're talking about. I wonder if the silly sods from Chatham were trying to rush through the development of this route as fast as possible, as this would explain the ugly and criminally basic scenery details. Quite frankly, I'm tired of seeing the devs frequently doing a piss-poor job with the scenery, even on the stuff that's right by the track. This is simply unacceptable, especially after we saw what's possible in this game with the excellent scenery on the Niedertalbahn, and it's also a massive letdown for something as significant as the first Austrian route in TSW. Only goes to show how little Dovetail really cares about making sure they deliver something even vaguely resembling a quality product.